Hello everybody, Raven Knight here. So, got a question that I'm going to be answering today. Could Guljin, the new leader of the Hatoons, defeat Apollyon the way she defeated Astria? I don't blame anyone for asking this. It makes sense that they would. When you create a big villain figure like Astria and then introduce a new character who defeats her, those kind of questions float around. If Guljin could beat Astria, the she-wolf of Horkos, does that mean that she could also defeat Apollyon? Today, I'll answer that question as best I can, but let's go ahead and bear in mind a few things before we start. For this discussion, I'm not talking about movesets, balancing, or specific character capabilities. I don't care about tiered feats and that kind of stuff. We're not talking about movesets or anything that would be involved in character balancing. That's just not what we can focus on. For this discussion, we are only looking at this from a lore perspective, and that's it, alright? So, I'm going to go ahead and start things off by giving a short answer to the question. Could Guljin defeat Apollyon like she defeated Astria? The short answer is no. But the long answer? That's a bit more complicated. Let's break this down first by understanding what it is that allowed the Hatoons to defeat Horkos in the first place. What was it? What were the factors at play that allowed them to win? I think there were three factors working against Astria here. The first is that we need to bear in mind that this was a surprise attack. The Hatoons' attack on Horkos and Astria was not one that anyone foresaw. The Hatoons were largely an afterthought to the citizens of Heathmoor. No one really perceived them as a threat or an issue to be faced, so there was no way they could have seen this coming. Further, while Astria didn't fully trust General Zhe, she had no way of knowing his secret plan involved an outside force like the Hatoons. She had her watchful eye on his own forces, not those he had waiting in the wings. It's difficult for any commander to anticipate every potential possibility, and the entire purpose of an ambush or surprise attack is to gain a tactical advantage over the enemy. So we can't really blame Astria too much for that, that's just kind of how that works. Second, though, the second factor. Astria had gone for almost years without strong or direct opposition to Horkos as a whole. Now, keep in mind, she's had opposition. She's had some small engagements. There have been some incidents that Horkos has had to deal with and some minor setbacks, but nothing as big or major as a Battle of the Eclipse has happened to Horkos in a while. And we can give a lot of credit to this, to the Celestial Sphere that Ravier came back with. It allowed Horkos to see into the future, to know Chimera's every action and movement, to see a lot of stuff that was going to happen in their future. They were able to prepare for and deal with a lot of situations that allowed them a huge leap forward and allowed them to anticipate all the moves that were coming. So we could argue that a lot of the stuff that happened in the following year after getting the Celestial Sphere, Horkos already saw coming, right down to perhaps the arrival of the Varangian Guard and the Ocelots. And while we're on that topic, we can look at some of the skirmishes and the battles that have taken place with Horkos and recognize that while some of them may have led to setbacks, they never really stopped Astria and Horkos from doing what they wanted to do. Despite the arrival of the Ephira, the Ocelots, and the Varangian Guard, despite the catastrophe of the Theater of Bones, despite all these things, Astria never slowed down and is, at the time of the arrival of the Hatoons, poised to take all of Heathmoor. She's practically achieved her goal of uniting all of Heathmoor under her banner. She's just literally one step away. And then that's when the Hatoons showed up. So essentially, Astria's gone for virtual years without any major opposition. She's pretty much had to just coast through all this. And when you're coasting for a while, when you actually hit that road bump, it can be very jarring. So I think not only did she get caught by surprise, she'd gotten so used to going coasting through all this and hadn't had any real opposition to slow her down that this suddenly made her slam on the brakes a little too hard, which leads to the third factor, her own overconfidence. This is where I think that we can look at this as a setback for her character rather than a setback of circumstance. Look, here's the thing. I'm not saying that Astria's foolish. She's a very smart woman. She knew not to trust General Zhe. She knew that he was an untrustworthy snake. But at the same time, she still went to the meeting because she knew that she could profit from it, and she didn't think there was anything General Zhe could do that would truly be a threat to her. I mean, think about it. If she really thought this guy was a threat, I don't think she'd entertain an alliance with him. I think she'd say, no, dude. I'm not taking any alliance with you. You're too dangerous. No, she looked at it and said, nah, I could still use him. I don't trust him, but I could still use him. And that shows a degree of confidence in herself and an underestimation of General Zhe. Even if it's a slight one, it's still there. And you can't blame her for being overconfident. Like I said earlier, she's coasted through this. Every event she has managed to move forward through. Every setback she's managed to overcome and still come out with an advantage. She got the Celestial Sphere. She defeated the Servants of the Stake. She overcame the Ocelot and managed to avoid them through Vela. You know, they attacked Vela, but she was still going strong. The Theater of Bones didn't even impact her. And though Maddox was defeated, the Varangian guards haven't stopped her. Chimera's an afterthought. What does she have to worry about at this point? Everything's coming up roses for her. What? This one General Juh? Yeah, he's an untrustworthy snake. But all I got to do is keep my guard up and have all my Horkos lieutenants and soldiers there ready to face him. There's nothing he can do to me. Here come the Hatoons. I did not see that coming. You know, it's one of those things. Now, I do want to again stress, she's no fool. Astria is no fool. But any leader can fall to overconfidence. Any leader can get a little bit too big for their own britches, and I think that might have been part of what happened to Astria here. Now, the only thing that happened, but I think that might have been her biggest problem here. She got a little too overconfident in what she was trying to do, and she did not see the coming of the Hatoons, and I think that hurt her. What I'm saying is this. Astria's downfall might have been avoided. Possibly, could have been, but at the same time, it's incredibly hard to know for certain when you take all these factors into account. Now let's compare this to Apollyon and what she did and who she is. To be 100% fair, we only know Apollyon's methods during her own campaign. There's no way to know exactly how she'd act if she was alive during the events of For Honor for the past several years. But based on her personality, ideology, and approaches for when she was active, we can make a few guesses. The primary reasons why I don't believe Apollyon would be so easily felled by Guljin are three very important advantages she has. The first, and possibly the biggest advantage, she not only knew about the Hatoons, she helped form them. Keep this in mind. Remember, Guljin's whole tribe, when she was a child, was destroyed by Blackstone-backed Hatoons, if not Blackstone warriors themselves. And Apollyon has traveled outside of Heathmore and met other cultures. She's met other groups. She undoubtedly met the Hatoons. That's why she sent the Blackstones to go either back or help the Hatoons break down what she kind of did in Heathmore, right? Apollyon was aware of the Hatoons and was taking steps to do to them what she'd done to Heathmore. She was allowing the wolves to rise amongst them. She would have been fully cognizant of their potential power and threat. In fact, it's highly possible she intended this outcome from the beginning in the event that Heathmore ever started to calm down again, or a new force could arise to challenge the status quo and turn the wheels of war once more. While Astria knew of the Hatoons but underestimated their power and influence, Apollyon likely would have already known, if not anticipated, what they were going to do and what they were capable of. I would not be surprised if Apollyon had planned far into the future that they will show up. I'm going to turn them into wolves, and eventually they will show up. Now, she might not have known that Guljin would be all peace happy, but she would have been like, yeah, in the future, you're going to show up and you're going to cause things in Heathmore. She may well have anticipated that. She knew what the Hatoons could be capable of. Second factor, Apollyon would never have accepted an alliance with Juh in the first place. Astria accepted the alliance because she thought that Juh could springboard her final conquest of all of Heathmore, and she thought he would be a necessary evil to take into her alliance and her, confidence. Apollyon would never have even entertained it. If you look at what Apollyon did throughout her campaign, yes, she propped up leaders. Yes, she propped up commanders and generals and jarls. She put people in power, no question. She never allied with them. She never formed an alliance. They were all, at the end of the day, tools to be used. Even Holden Cross, a person who was supposed to be her friend and ally, she knew would eventually betray her. When Holden finally leads the Iron Legion to attack her fortress, her response was, "At last." She knew this would happen. She wasn't looking for allies. She was never going to look for allies. You either fight with me or you fight against me. You're either with the Blackstone Legions or you're not a Blackstone Legion. We're going to fight, She she would never have entertained an alliance. Hell, when General Juh said, "Hey, why don't we be friends?" Apollyon might have just said, "Yeah, you know what? I'm attacking you just out of sheer principle." Like, that feels a lot more like what Apollyon would have done. And then finally, the third factor, her ideology would not have allowed for the same set of circumstances. We need to consider the difference in goals and actions of Apollyon and Astria. Apollyon divided the factions and turned them against each other, but Astria was creating a new regime and future for Heathmore, one in which the strong rule, namely her. Apollyon sought war for the sake of war, but Astria saw war as a means to an end, to weed out the weak and to promote the strong. The result of these two worldviews leads to very different outcomes. Astria's worldview, let's start with Astria. Astria's worldview makes her no less a visionary than Apollyon. And in some ways, We can respect Astria for what she was trying to do. Astria wants to create a better world, right? And she believes that the way to do that is to ensure that the strong are allowed to dictate the rules. That society is strong, resilient, and is not shackled by complacency and weakness. I've talked at length about the negatives of Astria's worldview and ideology, but a large part of that is because Apollyon would have a negative view of that. Quite often when I talk about these two, I'm talking about it from the perspective of Apollyon, and she would not approve of what Astria is doing. Me personally, I respect what Astria is trying to do. I'm just not a big fan of the manner in which she's going about it. I get why Astria is doing what she's doing, and I kind of respect it. The problem is that as she works to build this new world order, she has to inevitably unite Heathmore under her. The Knights, Vikings, Samurai, and Guljin can still certainly exist, but in the end, they must join Horkos or at least bow to them. At least the strong will. The weak will be left by the wayside. And the result of this means that if Astria falls, Horkos as an organization will crack. And when the organization cracks, it leads to infighting, splintering, and the collapse of what Astria was trying to build. Consider when Apollyon killed the Emperor of the Mires, she ensured a power struggle would result among the daimyo. The only thing she hadn't counted on was how quickly a victor would be decided. If you topple the leader of a united group without clear and agreed upon lines of succession, then the result will almost always be an internal collapse. Horkos was broken because Astria could not conceive a future where she was defeated. She was the strong. She was the she-wolf. She was the one meant to guide Heathmore to a better future. But if the large, strong force is defeated, all that's left are the weak, who were at the fringe edges of this group, now leaderless and directionless. If Ashfeld, the Mire, and Valkenheim's strong were all with Horkos, and now Horkos is broken, the big unifying group that was set to bring Heathmore together under these strong leaders, then with them broken, the weak, who were unable to join Horkos, who remain, would be easy pickings for the Hatuns. You took the strong of every nation and formed them into one group. Congratulations. What happens when that one group falters or fails? You only have the weak left. But in the case of Apollyon, well, division was her aim, but she ensured that the different factions would all be strong as a result. She ensured that each faction individually was a force to be reckoned with. Each one was powerful, each one a threat. They were not unified under her banner, they were merely molded by her into wolves to fight endlessly. Had the Hatuns invaded under Apollyon's world, they would have fought three strong but small forces. The question then becomes, could the Hatuns overcome these three individual packs of wolves? It is possible, but not likely. So, to give an example, say the Hatuns focus their attack on Ashfeld, right? First comes the arduous task of overcoming a powerful force of knights holding their home, okay? Then, assuming the Hatuns can take them down, and that's a big assumption, saying that they can defeat Ashfeld, right? Congratulations. The amount of resources, time, and casualties necessary to complete this task would be monumental. Add on to that the raids of the Vikings and the vengeful attacks of the samurai, and the Hatuns might not have time or the ability to replenish necessary strength. That's not even talking about the Guljin. Remember, the Guljin and the Hatuns are described as mortal enemies. They have to get through the Guljin just to get to Heathmore. That's another thing that they have to go through. The Hatuns would have a much harder time dealing with each individual issue that they have to go through, not one big, strong enemy. It's a lot like the Great Heathen Army when they were invading the English Channels, when they were invading the English Isles. When they were going after the big England nation, they didn't have a lot of trouble there. It was when they got to Ireland and all the small kingdoms and small provinces there. You beat the first one, good job. What about the other dozens of us, you know? You have to waste resources on each individual group and then replenish yourself to go after the next one. Then replenish yourself to go after the next one. Then replenish yourself to go after the next one. Defeating one powerful force is difficult. But if it's just one, you can focus all your time and resources on beating that one thing. You go up against a bunch of different smaller ones, but all of them are strong. You have to wait resources beating the first one, then the next one, then the next one, then the next one, and eventually you start to whittle down. Now, am I saying that it is 100% for sure that Apollyon would totally have beaten Guljin? No, I'm not saying that. There are a lot more factors to keep in mind, especially timing, place, the fact that Astria had molded Heathmore into something very different than what Apollyon was used to. You got to take the Outlanders into account because the Outlanders are a major part of all this. There is a lot that goes into this. There's a lot that goes into this, so I'm not going to sit here and say for sure that I think Apollyon would or would not have been defeated. But I think when you analyze the two circumstances, when you analyze the ideologies, and when you analyze how Apollyon would have viewed the Hatuns versus how Astria viewed them, bear in mind, Astria knew about the Hatuns but never saw them as a threat or an issue. Apollyon molded the Hatuns into what they became. She set them up to become wolves. Yeah, Guljin can call herself a shepherd. Go ahead, do it. You were still molded by Apollyon into a wolf. Because Guljin's family and tribe was destroyed by the Blackstone warriors, if not Blackstone-backed Hatuns, Apollyon set this up. And Apollyon, were she alive and noticed the Hatuns coming, you took your time, but you're here. Let's have some fun. And plus, bear this in mind as well. Bear this. This is my last point, and then I'll let y'all go, okay? I know I've been on this for a while, but this is my last point, and then I'll let it go. Bear this in mind. With Astria defeated by Guljin, what happens to Horkos? That's a big question. Will they slink away into the shadows? Will they fracture into infighting? Will they run away and hide? Will they still exist but with a new leader? There's a lot of questions that happen with Horkos, and none of them good, because the outcome is now that Horkos is now on the back foot and has been broken. Horkos has essentially been broken, and what they become is a big question mark. When Apollyon was defeated, did that stop her plan? Sure, the Blackstone Legion was pretty much fractured, but the war still went on. The factions were still strong. Apollyon still got what she wanted in the end. Even if Guljin hunted down, fought Apollyon, and won, even if she defeats and kills Apollyon, it doesn't change the reality of the Heathmoor Apollyon built. Guljin can't conquer all of Heathmoor by beating one person, not Astria and not Apollyon. The question is, by defeating this one she-wolf, what does that leave her with? If she defeats Astria, she's broken the back of Horkos, the big unifying power of Heathmoor. If you defeat Apollyon, great. What about the three factions she wasn't truly in charge of? With her gone, the Iron Legion is still in charge of Ashfeld. With her gone, the Vikings are still run by the Warborn clan. With her gone, Ayu is still Emperor of the Mire and has still unified the Mire. With her gone, the Wulin are still a very real threat. You have defeated one very dangerous woman. Good job. You are no less closer to victory. There's a lot that goes into this. And do you see why this is a difficult question to tackle? So again, I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, well, you know, she could totally defeat Astria, but not Apollyon. Oh, she could defeat Apollyon just as easily as she defeated Astria. I'm not going to say either of those things. The reason I said the short answer is no is merely because the circumstances are so starkly different. Defeating Apollyon would not result in the same outcome as defeating Astria did, and I think that is for sure. If Guljin's goal is to unify Heathmoor under her banner, to bring it into her Khanate, defeating Astria and defeating Apollyon will result in two different outcomes, one of which is far more to her benefit. Now, I will also say this. We don't fully know what's become of Horkos. With Astria gone, will Horkos endure? Will there be a new leader? Will they prop someone else up? Will Ravier take over? Will Vela take over? Will someone brand new take over? Will Horkos just fall to infighting and fracture and run away? Will Horkos just go into hiding and rebuild itself? We don't know yet. Next year we may learn more about that. But right now, as things stand, Horkos, the big enemy, the big unifying power, its future is in question. And because of that, the Hatuns have a huge advantage. If Apollyon's defeated, okay, you get rid of the leader of the Blackstone Legion, they're pretty much gone. You haven't gotten any closer to conquering Heathmoor. If anything, you've only gotten closer to conquering Ashfeld because the Iron Legion would still be kind of rebuilding at this point. So you may have an advantage there. Nowhere else. And that's why I made this video. I just wanted to discuss that. This is more of a discussion video rather than a clear answer to that question. And I know for some of you it's a little disappointing. You probably wanted me to give a more clear, direct answer, but that's probably the best I can give under these circumstances. I hope you liked the video. It was just me kind of throwing around some ideas. And I also want to say this for the record. I do want to say this. I'll close on this point. I get a lot of people who think that I hate Astria because of my Apollyon versus Astria video, where I really slammed Astria hard. And while I will admit she's not my favorite character and I do have my issues with her, I do want to set the record straight. I don't hate Astria. I do not hate her. I respect a lot of what she's trying to do. I respect her worldview. I think it comes from a place of understanding, and I do get what she wants. The thing is, I find Apollyon more fascinating, and when I look at Apollyon and view it through her eyes, if I were to jump into Apollyon's mind and view Astria through her lens, I would definitely disagree with everything Astria is doing, and that's why I looked at it that way. So please don't misunderstand me and say, oh, you just don't like Astria. No, I like her fine. I don't hate her. I think that she's been way too saturated in the lore. I feel like Horkos has just been way too saturated, and I'm glad Horkos has been defeated so that we can actually get some more differentiated lore, new stuff to add. Because have y'all noticed that anytime they add lore that doesn't have to do with Horkos, it's historical stuff? It's stuff from Heathmoor's past, not stuff from the present. We might be able to get more present lore that isn't Horkos focused. So, hey, you know, I'm okay with that. But I don't hate Astria. I don't hate Horkos. I just wanted to see some new stuff happen, and it looks like some new stuff is happening. But I thought that I'd talk about this. What do you guys think? Let me know down in the comments below. Be respectful, of course, and as always, I will see you in my next video. I'll take care.